Hello and welcome to the New Earth Architectress podcast. And today is a very, very special day. We are graced with the presence of our first guest speaker. Her name is Rachael Grochowski. She is an architect leading an amazing firm called RHD Design, correct, Rachel?
RHG. RHG
RHG, my
Design.
apologies.
We're RHG Design on Instagram, but we're RHG Architecture and Design.
Yeah, right. I
Yeah.
I canceled the G and went right to the design part. So
Yeah.
RHG Design, and you are in outside of New York, correct?
Yes.
Yes,
We're in
yes.
Montclair, New Jersey. Yep.
Okay,
Mhm.
beautiful. So it's such a delight and honor to have you on the show. You have been also on the Sacred Blueprint interview series several times. And once again, you are just really a blessing. It's a blessing to have you in my community. And I am so excited to continue the conversation about what's possible when we bridge spiritual wisdom with architecture. Yes.
Mm.
So, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I
Let's
do. Well, I
come
just
through.
wanted to say thank you for having me. It's an honor to be, especially in particular, your first
Yes.
interviewee. But yeah, I always love speaking with you. It's inspiring and sharing commonalities in what we do.
Yeah, yeah. Beautiful. Yes, yes. This is so exciting. Yes, the first guest. So, Rachel, for listeners who don't know you, can you share how you began weaving a spiritual approach with architecture? Can you give us a bit of a background? Like, how did this all start?
Yeah, I'll try to keep the answer contained because I feel like it's my whole life. Um, I did, I think as a small child, I realized that there was something more. And, I did my first yoga practice when I was in second grade, did meditation practices that I carried through my life. But that was kind of like the seed that was planted back then. And I think in high school, I was studying the great wisdom keepers and different religions of the world. And when I got to college, I had believed in environmentalism, in connection, community, energy, and I had designed a uh, wellness retreat center as my thesis project. So I was already thinking about, how do we connect to the land? I was, learning about the indigenous American culture and how, because the location of the project, and then I went into my like professional world, and I kind of lost it a little bit. I lost that understanding, or maybe it wasn't a loss of understanding, but intention of staying close to spirit. But I kind of, worked for some amazing boutique firms in New York City, and I started thinking like, oh my God, what am I actually doing? What is my purpose? Where is my purpose? At the same time, I started diving more deeply into or back into my spiritual world, whether it be again studying, ancient religions, or my yoga practice, studying the sutras, studying feng shui and batsu and Taoism, and I came to this moment of realizing that the experiences we have, especially when we're young, land in our body. There's a knowingness that we have about what is right, what feels right, what helps us connect. Um, and those were things that I integrated, again, going back to that thesis project, integrated intuitively into that design. So design elements, right? Here I am now, however many years later, and I started realizing, like, oh, everything I've been learning and remembering about the spiritual world is already in the design that I'm doing. And it was like it was like a unification. I kept trying to figure out where
Right.
do these things come together. And then I realized like actually I'm doing it.
Yeah.
And I've been doing it all along. Right. And so, a couple days ago I was saying, because I think of very much my practice as like the yoga of life and the yoga of architecture. But
Mm.
yoga means union,
Yeah.
right? Like,
The
so here
coming
it is.
back
It's like a
together.
union.
Right.
Hmm.
Oh, I love this. So at just a certain moment in time, it became more conscious for you. That's what I'm hearing. And that, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. It became more conscious, and began to feel then instantly confident in telling the story of what I've actually been doing, and sharing that with clients, and sharing that,
Right.
as a message, and sharing it with other architects and designers, because, I think this is how we actually can help heal. And right now,
Mm.
more than anything, that's what we need.
Wow. I just got shivers. Yeah. Right now, more than ever, that is what we need. And that it helps, that can help people heal. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I love how you talk about architecture as being a yoga practice for you. Is that what were the exact words you used there?
So I often, just for my language, I say it's the yoga of design. So yoga, living the yoga. So for me, you create a philosophy. Some people follow a philosophy, or they take different bits of different philosophies and create kind of their own value system, is maybe another way to think about it. For me, I think about it as living the yoga. And if I'm going to live the yoga, that means I have to practice yoga in design, in architecture. And that's about, presence. That's about truth. That's about non-harm. It's all of the sutras. It's all of the um, belief system that ultimately, you think about as your daily life, and the way you show up and how you have relationship with people, but it's also how you have relationship with space, nature, each other, and uh, what you're creating.
Mm. And you know what? It's so important. When as you were speaking, I was just uh I I could see, I could feel like that there's this integration process, this full kind of like seeping in of, oh, like this way of walking, a way of walking the land, a way of walking in the way you run your practice, your business, a way of walking when it comes to your leadership, a way of walking when you select materials, right? This sacred walk. And it's not just about, okay, well, how often do you meditate, and are you going to the yoga class after work, which is very important and, absolutely is essential. I'm thinking about the days when yoga wasn't even that in, and, the amount of stress that people were going through, in the architecture world, and still do, can
Hmm.
maybe open that as another topic. But what I'm hearing is that for you, it's I guess it's about this wholeness, this oneness, and that, okay, if I'm doing the meditation work, committed to doing my yoga practice. By the way, Rachel, for the listeners, is a yoga teacher, and she calls herself a student as well, but you are
Hmm.
also, you're really coming from that background, that foundation, but bringing that in to your projects, bringing that philosophy is not that truth, that way of
Hmm.
being, that consciousness, that heart, that breath. Keep on getting the in breath and the out breath with the way that your presence just emanates with that. And also your work too. I've seen the work that you do, and there is this beauty. You can really feel that intention, that
Hmm.
that yoga behind it. Yeah. Can you share a
And
bit more about, and continue please with what you wanted to say?
well, I was going to say, I was going to say that I think the work, that's where I started to understand that I was already practicing and pra- living through the practice, uh, what we've been talking about, because, you know, not all clients can understand energy or, I might want to talk about truth in materials or the energy of the land. It's either the energy of the space or the energy of the land, or the rise of the sun and what that does for you. But you can choose words that most will land in most people, and
Mm,
you have to read who your client is and decide how
yeah.
much you can share. But you should be in my opinion, you do the work, or you present the practice either way. It's just sometimes you share more about it than others. But
Right.
ultimately what was happening is I would go into the projects when they were complete, and I was seeing how it was changing people's lives.
Oh my God.
And and I could see, like, I would walk in and I'd be like, they would say, my house makes me feel so calm.
Yeah.
I always feel so good when I'm here. And I mean, I'm sure lots of people's work ends up with, it feels fresh, it's
Sure.
new, it's renovated, but there's literally like, it feels like the exhale,
Oh
right?
wow.
And what you said before about the inhale, exhale, like again, and the exhale, by the way, is what actually calms the nervous system, right? Like in our bodies, that is scientifically accurate, right? So if a space feels like the exhale, like that explains like why it's calm.
Wow.
And so I was seeing the results of that in projects without even like realizing what I was really doing, or how there was intention behind it, but it wasn't like, oh, this person came to me and said, I want a calm space.
Right.
Um, and then I would talk about philosophically, or things like truth. Um, that might be the truth. This is just for me a little example. Like sometimes people will come to me and say, oh, in my kitchen, I really want a resilient countertop material, but I really love the look of marble. Let's just use this like man-made
Right.
material, and I will say, I think that's an option.
Yeah.
And let's just think about this a little bit. Like, how does that feel? How does that feel to have something that looks like something it's not? Right? Like, is
Yeah.
that true? And what happens when a little lie like resides in your body? Like, how does that start to
Wow.
sit and grow? And again, I can talk about that with some clients and not others.
Yeah.
So, on the residential side, that's how this all that's also that kind of helped me come to realizing that I was already doing the work. But now what is happening is, because of these conversations, our work is changing and growing into affecting not just families, but larger groups of people. So whether, we're doing a community space
Right.
that the objective is to really, you know, encourage people to connect. Again, one of the things that we most need right now.
Oh,
Or
sure.
right, like that's what we're all talking about, right? The lack of connection.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So we're doing lots of projects, like, community projects. So supporting organizations that are either arts focused, or we've started working on a Ayurvedic farm.
Oh, that's amazing.
Yeah, which is, infused with ritual. And then obviously, so again, it's this obviously Ayurveda is the true integration of the truth, right? From the earth to the
Yeah.
practice to each individual design, all of it. And so to be working on a project like this is an honor and a learning, I mean, I don't
Yeah.
ever want to pretend that you said that I also see myself as a student. I am first a student. I
Yeah.
am first a
Yeah.
student. There's so much to learn because we're all returning home, right? Like, isn't that what we're doing? We're returning
Oh,
home.
whenever you say that, I get shivers, Rachel. I mean, it's like it's this treasure hunt in our, into the depths of our being, and that wisdom that we all have carried, but somewhere along the way, it's been severed, that tie, that connection. And, I was in Ephesus just last week getting ready for my VIP retreat, the 2-day VIP retreat
Hmm.
for women architects and designers who are eager to bridge spiritual wisdom with design, but they don't know how they're going to do it, like business wise.
Hmm.
This is a big power place. But, when you are sharing that, it's about remembering, it's about coming home. What's interesting about the temple map, like the ancient city map, is that the temple of Artemis, which was the essence temple where the mysteries were taught. This temple is far off the main Ephes ancient city. People had to go walk on a road. It would have probably taken them, a half hour to walk over to that side, to the temple, to where these mysteries were taught. It's one of the seven wonders of the world, by the way. And not so. What I wanted to say is, not much is standing there anymore, except
Hmm.
for a very tall column. There's foundations there. You see how the temple expanded over time. But there is now a main highway that has severed the connection between the ancient city and that temple. And that map just came up for me as you were speaking, that it's about this remembering. And it's like, we need to piece that road back together again, to the goddess, to the wisdom of the land, to the the
Hmm.
spirit
Hmm.
that was uh that we were cut off from for
Hmm.
so many, hundreds of years. And now it's time to bring it back. It's time to bring it back. It's time to connect with this this ancient wisdom. Yeah, which
Hmm.
is what you're doing, Rachel.
Hmm.
And yeah, yeah,
It just makes me think of, my yoga teacher, Sean Cornoy says, if not now, when? Right?
wow.
Like now is the time. I
Now's the
agree.
time. Now
Yeah.
is the time. And Rachel, I'm seeing you, like, your business is flourishing. Again, you're sharing that you're attracting new projects that probably you didn't attract. I'm assuming from what you're sharing is that, when you first started out, I mean, did you know that you were going to be designing this, like, Ayurvedic farm?
Mm.
And right, like, maybe you always knew, maybe there was a part of you that always knew. But what I'm seeing is that as you are having this conversation, as you say, about the spiritual world, whether it is through asking these very deep, these questions to your clients, and asking them to tune into how they feel about their space, to actually talking about the yoga, to actually talking about the world of energy and the spirit of the land. But this is this is attracting more clients for you. This is attracting the right kinds of projects. Is this feeling true and aligned for what I'm saying? Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it feels like a tipping point because I think in many ways, as I've been saying, like we've been doing this, I've been doing this for a long time, but in 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 ways that were changing families' lives and changing smaller groups of people's lives. And now there's the possibility of it just like keeps growing larger, larger, and larger. And it has been something, I mean, quite frankly, I have always known. And I don't know how many years ago, maybe it was like 5 years ago now. I remember when I was in this struggle, it was this struggle of, the two worlds growing and how do they come together. And
Yeah.
my daughter wanted to go to Omega, which is like a retreat center in New York State. She wanted to attend some session there. And I was like, okay, great. Like, I'm never going to say no to going to Omega.
Right.
And, um, and so I decided to go and to do a class that was an intuitive. And it was to teach you, it was to sort of help you strengthen your intuitive powers, in particular in reading, either channeling in others who had passed or reading each other. And anyway, at the end of the weekend, he's like, well, I'm going to just choose some people randomly, and I'm going to either channel somebody or anyway give you a reading. And I said, how do these two worlds come together? And he said, well, you're going to create something like Omega. And I was like, yeah, I mean, I know that.
Yeah.
It was like I just knew that. And I
Yeah.
mean, Omega, for anyone who doesn't know about it, it is a retreat center that has it's regenerative farming on it. It has its own water treatment, it's yoga, it's its own um, they have communal living. You can go there and work there for the summer as a trade for the classes. Um, I'm trying to think what else they do there, but it's environmental, regenerative, and community, of course. So it really is this. And then they also have a place in Costa Rica, Blue Spirit. So it's all very similar and all related, and they're all very much what I've always known I was going to be creating. And so now we are in the situation that we're working on creating these spaces, and so we're also having conversations about wellness real estate from a like a multifamily perspective. So one of my other personal objectives is that like this should be for everybody, right?
Yes.
Like right now in the United States in particular, quite frankly, like you can't find this stuff. Very few people are designing and building wellness spaces that are accessible to everyone.
Yeah.
However, we're in the process of talking about a multifamily, what's called workforce housing. So it's not low income and it's not high income. It's like,
The mid.
school teachers.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And to me, this is like how we deepen the healing, access to healing to more people, right? Because if it's always
Right.
only accessible for a high dollar, then not and everyone's going to have access to this. So that's really exciting too. We are, and there's a handful of other projects too that I can't actually talk about right now, but there's spas and
Woo!
other retreat centers that are very exciting. And so, yeah, we really are.
Doing
It
it.
is the conversation
Yeah.
that's building the energy. And I think ultimately part of it is I'm because this has been my life, and it's not, like everything else, you always have to be pushing the envelope, because as soon as everybody's coming along, that means it's going to start to get watered down, right?
Mm,
So if I say wellness, like I don't even like to use that word
right.
anymore.
Yeah.
It's like, what does that
It's
even mean, right?
yeah, it starts to
Now we
get
talk
really
about it
gimmicky.
spiritually.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Can get gimmicky. I mean, the word green is overused now,
Hmm.
right? Let's put the
Hmm.
green sticker on, but it's like for me, I've always challenged the sustainability and green. Um, I don't even know if I want to call it a movement, because it's gone out of the movement into more of a commercial thing. And I definitely don't, I don't think that, having LEED certification or any of that stuff is a bad thing. But what the missing piece is our connection with our mother, with the land, with the nature spirits, right? And this approach that you're bringing, which is about, what I'm seeing is this process that you guide your clients through to really help them to tune into not only the space, but their own inner world, right? And then once we start doing that, once we start connecting with nature, I mean, we are nature on that deep level, and we acknowledge, like our Indigenous brothers and sisters would and still do, then we're really birthing a living architecture. And there's so much power there.
Yeah, it's holding the reverence,
Yeah.
right? Like it's the reverence for, I mean, the gift, and that's part of the work too, is like sharing this perspective with clients. Um, the reverence for Mother Nature, who has given us literally her life to build
Yeah.
our structures that allows us to have our lives, right? Like, how much energy went into growing the tree that gets turned into the lumber to build the structure,
Yeah.
or the stone that becomes the countertop. I mean, that's why it's such an interdependent relationship, not just with each other, but with Mother Nature. And I think, that's that too. I really try to lean into, I can't tell the whole story to every client, but if I can talk about one material that I can spend 5 minutes even explaining, remember, somebody conceived of this, you know, somebody conceived of, this, a chair,
Yeah.
somewhere back in time, people didn't want to squat anymore, and somebody conceived of something to sit on. And then every decision and every thought,
Bringing
every bit of energy
consciousness to
that's
that.
gone through it.
Yeah.
Yeah, right? Like it, without the first one, we wouldn't, the path wouldn't have been started. And then even to the point of the person who delivers the piece that you've had, that's been made and is going to reside in your home.
Yeah. Their
Yeah,
story.
it's a long line, right?
It's a long line, and it all carries energy. It all carries an energy with a certain frequency too, a story, right? We
Mm,
talk, I mean, the spirit of the land is full of stories, right? Some that are traumatic, some that are of,
mhm,
of joy, of happiness, right? And all of these are ingrained within the land, just like you're talking about with pieces, furniture pieces, millwork, I mean, the material itself,
mhm,
herself, where
mhm,
she comes from, right? And this just imbuing architecture with this consciousness. I mean, it's uh it's transformational. It's
mhm.
transformational, and I'm so excited about the projects that you're working on. Rachel, you are building the thesis project again,
Yes,
right?
yes.
Like the project in university
Mhm,
that,
mhm,
at first, I think you shared with me before that, the professors are like, what is this healing center project, right? Like,
mhm. Yeah,
and
they
you're
were like,
doing it.
yeah, they were like, this is like, I mean, I think if I could go back and think about what they really meant is, again, there are a lot more female architects now than there were then.
Right.
So they were mostly men, and I think was soft to them. It was
Okay.
like, why? It's not that, like, that's not meaningful enough.
Right.
And also working with materials that were green, what we called green then. I mean,
Right. Like
now
natural
you already mentioned this.
materials. Yeah.
Yeah, using that, yeah, and working with sunlight and working with, natural airflow and, that was to them just kind of woo woo and soft and like for me, I was like, I mean, no, this is everything. Um, and and it is I'm now recreating that, and I've set that intention for a long time, and for to some extent, I thought it was going to be me building it for myself, and it's even more exciting for it not to be for myself, right?
Mm,
You know,
yes.
because other people are more skilled at running these types of places than I am,
Right,
and so it's
exactly.
better for
Like
me to
running a
just.
retreat center is a whole other, or a farm, right? Is a whole other.
Mhm.
Wow. And just, yeah. And then the impact that you can make, how rewarding that must be too, Rachel.
It is because when I talk about this college project a lot because it's very, I've thought about it for many years, and so I can very succinctly describe how I integrated what was important to me into that project. And so for me, I'm trying to extract from the clients what's important from to them and put them into the projects. But for example, you know, I had been in elementary school. I went to this like progressive public school where we had this sunken pit that was where we would have conversations that were, for the whole grade, and they somehow were very important or had required a level of intimacy, or truth to be told, and somehow by like stepping down into that pit there was a there was a comfort, right? A protection that existed. Now, that concept you could go back to ancient, you know, landforms and
Yeah.
find, right? So, but I somehow understood that I needed to integrate that into my project, and I did create this pit that was engaged
Wow.
around a fire pit that was where the community would come together and tell stories and
Oh,
truths, as part of the program. And there were many things throughout the project like that. And now that's what I'm doing is I'm asking people those questions. So, what are some memories that of your childhood or your life that hold real consciousness or awareness, either in your body or in your mind, or that you can share, that we can now start to sort of dive into. There's a real psychology behind it in the end, I guess, which I didn't realize as
right.
I went into the industry, but it's important.
Oh, it's that story. I mean, it was so vivid in a way for me, just seeing these children go into this pit, and then that the structure, the form, how that provides this safety for a whole other form of gathering and exchange, a different kind of conversation, and allowing those children to feel safe when they're speaking and sharing, and that influenced your your healing center project
Mhm,
is incredible. It's incredible. And that's really the power of architecture, that it can provide that grounding, that anchoring, that calmness, that peace, that and different forms and different shapes, right? Different
mhm,
movements create a different kind of vibration, a different kind of quality, and that for each function, a different form is actually can be, beneficial.
mhm.
So as we slowly wrap up today's talk, Rachel, I see you as a trailblazer in architecture. You are pioneering the future architecture through your heart-centered, conscious, and compassionate approach, an approach that involves listening and asking the right questions too. An approach that is weaving in your knowledge of spirit, and your, of course, you're a student as well, you're constant learning about spirit as well. What do you, for women architects and designers who are now really feeling the nudges, they're on this threshold. There's a lot of them right now. They're fed up with the grind of conventional practice. They're fed up with their bodies being depleted. I mean, I certainly had chronic illnesses, and at a certain moment I had to just stop. I had to quit the conventional way and pave this new way, with the sacred blueprint and the work that I'm doing with mentoring other women architects and designers. So, there's a lot of women right now who don't think that, they don't, they're scared. They don't know if they can make money by speaking their truth, weaving energy and spirit into the practice, into the way they design. I mean, I certainly was. They were in fear of being ostracized. They are, right? By the profession, by the association. Scared about talking about the world of spirit. What would you say to these women? What would be your advice for them? Yeah.
A couple of things. So, number one, I would say, believe in yourself and believe in the intuition that you have, because I think, the fear and maybe to some extent there's truth. Like there certainly will be people who consider it to be continue to consider it to be woo woo or outside of the box. But honestly, diving into this right now is absolutely being on the forefront of what's to come. I believe that we are entering into a revolution of um, value of the industry. Um, I don't think that there's always going to be the architects who are back there just like doing drawings,
Yeah.
but businesses, families, uh, organizations are all looking for the way back to connection and wellness. And by talking about spirit and energy, and it's not, I shouldn't, let me take a step back, not by talking about it, by practicing it,
Mm,
uh, it will without a doubt attract the right clients. It doesn't mean that you don't have other clients who
yeah.
you can't share this with, or you, again, everybody's at a different place, but I think it's, you got to believe in it. And you also have to do your own work. Like
Hmm.
the reason, you know, I think, there's no shortcut. You really have to get to the moment, like you have described for yourself, of like, I don't want to do this anymore. But it wasn't just that, right? Like it was your knowingness behind it, and then
Yeah.
doing the work
Yeah.
to understand that knowingness and then share it. And you don't have to wait until
It's
again,
all
everybody's
perfect. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, and you have to wait because again, we're students our whole lives.
Yeah.
And so if we approach it that way and also collaborate with each other
Yeah.
so that we can learn from each other, then we continue to magnify the message. The bigger the message, the more people are going to hear it, the more people are going to want it.
Yeah. I'm just seeing, as you speak, I'm seeing this little pebble dropping on the surface of the water. Take that step, even if it's a baby step, and the ripples of that first step will
Mhm.
go, kilometers out
Absolutely.
radius. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, honestly, if you change one person's life, Isn't that enough? Right? Like, and because you change that one person's life, then they change somebody else's
And then
life, and they change
and
somebody
then it
else's
might
life.
come back around again
Yeah,
to you. And yeah, it's
yeah.
just, it's incredible. So
Mhm.
Rachel, what's the new earth for you?
What's the new earth? I mean,
Yeah.
uh, the new earth is really connection. I mean, the new earth is spiritual.
Mm,
Uh, it's it's truth. Um, what keeps coming to me is grounded. So,
mm,
I mean, I know earth, it seems like earth and grounded are the same thing, but it's not. It's not. I mean, it's a feeling and it's a being. And to me, uh, moving forward in the future is about staying connected to the center, um,
mm.
authentically and completely.
Yeah.
And so that's what it is. Yeah.
And imagine what kind of architecture then births out of something like that, right?
Mm.
This
And,
connected.
and there's a healing in that, right? So
Yeah.
yeah. Mhm.
So beautiful, Rachel. Well, thank you so much for being our first guest on the New Earth Architectress podcast. It's really an honor to have you. Before we close, I'd love for you to share what you're up to. You've been
Mm.
speaking a lot in conferences, I think, as well
Mhm.
as, would love to hear what other kinds of projects you're working on, and how can women find you, to be inspired, connect with you, and for property owners, new earth visionaries, right? Leaders who are wanting to birth a community or a new project. How can people get in touch with you?
Yeah, so we're on Instagram at RHG Design. Also, our web is same thing, RHG Design. Um, and yeah, as far as like what I've been doing, I just this week I was at spoke at an event by Well Designed, and it's really a new-ish organization that is about the wellness of designers and architects. And that was really exciting to share my story as well. But the message is that, fill your own cup first. Um, I was also recently a part of the global wellness real estate event that happened in New York City, and I hosted a table where we talked about spirituality in design, so similar things that we're talking about right now. And it was really exciting to see, again, even within this wellness word, how people divide out between spirit, land, environment, and more scientific perspective, language.
Yeah.
So it was really interesting to see how people did this, and then this coming Monday, I have a conversation, Design is Spiritual, with Danny Seo of Danny Seo magazine and Industry West, and it's for the New York City by Design festival that is ongoing. It just started, I think, maybe like 2 days ago, and it's also part of the ICFF
Okay. Yeah.
schedule.
Oh,
Mhm.
nice.
So lots of speaking events happening right now. It's exciting. And because I want to share the message. I want to encourage other people, as you are too, to come into this conversation. And as far as our projects, other projects we have going, we have a public market project, which is again about community and people coming together and sharing their artistry, their craft, whether
Mm,
it's food or things that they're making, as well as we also do a lot of work in the cannabis space. So we're creating spaces that are for wellness. People are using obviously cannabis
yeah.
medicinally, and working on spaces that people can actually heal through the use of cannabis. Um, and and then I think I mentioned most of the other bigger
Yeah,
projects that we're
this
working on. Yeah,
Ayurveda farm.
yeah, the
Yeah,
Ayurvedic farm and
amazing.
wellness spa also. Well, we have two wellness spas, so
Woo!
different types of wellness. But that's I think what's also important is that in our own healing, different modalities work for different people,
Mm,
and that's why it's important to have familiarity or offerings across the board.
love
But
it.
thank you so much for
This
having
is
me on, by the way.
Oh, yeah, it's
Been
my
such a
pleasure.
pleasure.
I always love having a conversation with you, Rachel. It's so inspiring. It's so expansive. It reminds me about what our, the work is really about, the importance of this work and that we're right now we are the pioneers, and sometimes that path can be lonely. And so it's
Mhm,
really great to connect with other women architects and designers, especially ones like you who have yeah, a really, long experience working with various scales of projects, commercial, residential, right? And
mhm,
it's inspiring and enriching, and
mhm.
feel the connection, which is a word that you've used a lot this talk. So yeah,
Yeah,
here's
yeah,
to the
yeah, thank
connection.
you.
Yeah.
Absolutely, and I feel the same. It is important for us to all kind of connect with each other and keep each other inspired because it can get to be a lonely road. And I'm really glad that you're doing this for all the women architects out there.
Thank you, Rachel. It was a delight to have you on the show, and look forward to having you again soon.
Yeah, thank you. Be well.
Have a good rest of the day. Bye bye.
Thanks. Bye.